God is not a tempter. Why did he allow Satan to torment and take everything from Job?
He has taken everything from us. How much more can he do? Why not curse him before he takes even your breath away?
Silence. You do not know what you're talking about.
One of the strangest episodes in the Bible is the conversation between God and Satan over Job, a devoted man of God. In the story, as recorded in the book of Job chapter 1, starting from verse 6, it seems like God gave permission to Satan to attack Job, a man who feared, served, and honored God. The passage reads as follows: "Now there was a day when the sons of God came to present themselves before the Lord, and Satan also came among them. The Lord said to Satan, 'From where have you come?' Satan answered the Lord and said, 'From going to and fro on the earth, and from walking up and down on it.' And the Lord said to Satan, 'Have you considered my servant Job, that there is none like him on the earth, a blameless and upright man, who fears God and turns away from evil?' Then Satan answered the Lord and said, 'Does Job fear God for no reason? Have you not put a hedge around him and his house and all that he has on every side? You have blessed the work of his hands, and his possessions have increased in the land. But stretch out your hand and touch all that he has, and he will curse you to your face.' And the Lord said to Satan, 'Behold, all that he has is in your hand. Only against him do not stretch out your hand.' So Satan went out from the presence of the Lord." Essentially, God praised Job for his righteousness and devotion to him, but Satan countered that Job is only good because God protected and blessed him. He argued that if God withdrew his protection and material blessing, Job would react like everyone else in that situation and curse God. To that, God said, "Give it your best shot. You may take everything he owns, but do not touch his life." Thereafter, Satan gladly went to work on his attack on Job. We know from the book of James, chapter 1, verse 13, that God is not a tempter. As Apostle James rightly noted, "When tempted, no one should say, 'God is tempting me.' For God cannot be tempted by evil, nor does he tempt anyone." So if God is not a tempter, what happened with Job? Why did God allow Satan to take everything away from Job to test his loyalty to God? Why did God allow a good man to suffer for the sake of indulging Satan? These are very tough questions that have perplexed Christians and Bible scholars, and have become the subject of theological and philosophical debate for centuries. In this episode, we will try to address these questions. With God's permission, Satan ensured that Job loses his children, his servants, his possessions, and his health. He took him from the pinnacle of wealth and respect to the depth of suffering, loneliness, tears, and sickness. This severity of Satan's attack compelled Job to ask the question that we often ask when faced with life challenges. We ask, why me? Why did God allow this to happen to me? Have I not been good? What about all the evil people walking about without any problem? We start to weigh the righteousness of our actions against the affliction against us, and then conclude that life is unfair, which in other words means God's administration of the universe is unfair. This is exactly how Job reacted to the loss of his family, wealth, and health. He vented in frustration. But unlike most people, his faith and belief in God remained constant and consistent. He would not curse God, even at the instigation of his beloved, but frustrated wife. Seeing her husband sitting in the dust, scraping his sores silently, Job's wife bursts out, "Do you still persist in your integrity? Curse God and die." Job chapter 2, verse 9. In modern parlance, she asked him what is there to live for, given that he has lost everything and has been abandoned by God. But Job would not curse God. He would not let Satan win. If anything, though he initially wavered, but through the trials and suffering, his faith and righteousness were ultimately strengthened. This is perhaps what God foresaw that made him stood by while Satan tormented Job. So why did God allow Satan to torment Job, his righteous servant? It has to do with free will, the free will of Satan and the free will of Job. God did not ask Satan to torment Job and take everything away from him. That is not what God does or want. However, he allowed Satan to exercise his free will. Satan's quarrel is with God. This is revealed in the book of Isaiah. In verses 13 and 14, Satan infamously declared his rebellion against God when he said, "I will ascend to heaven. I will raise my throne above the stars of God, and I will sit on the mount of assembly in the recesses of the north. I will ascend above the heights of the clouds. I will make myself like the Most High." Satan's attack on God's favorite creatures, human beings, is an indirect attack on God. It is an attempt to undermine God. He is allowed to do this because God permits him to exercise his will freely. He has a choice to be good or evil. In the case of Job, he chose, as it is his nature, to attack a good man for the sole purpose of spiting God. But Job also has free will. In the end, he chose to continue to honor God, which ultimately validates God's trust in him. When God finally responds to Job's question of "Why me?", he reminded Job that he, Job, does not have sufficient knowledge about the complexity of the universe to fully understand the nature of his experience. We complain about personal challenges because we cannot see more than a split fraction of God's grand design for the universe. God can see the beginning to the end and beyond, but we can only see less than a tiny portion of that which is in front of us. Yet we complain in ignorance. Free will may allow the devil to perpetuate evil, but it also allows us to resist the devil and not play his game. Apostle James says, "Resist the devil, and he will flee from you. He will move away from you to seek another to conquer and devour." Yet devil wields enormous power. We cannot resist him on our own. We need the grace and salvation of Jesus Christ, the author and finisher of our faith. For we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places. Ephesians 6 verse 12. Christ has conquered Satan and destroyed the sting of sin through his righteous sacrifice of death and resurrection. All those who believe and ask will share in this grace of redemption and salvation. The story of Job reminds us that God will honor those who stand with him in faith, even in the face of impossible tragedy. At the end of the trial, God's grace returned to Job, and he regained everything he lost twice over. The story also reminds us to not only to be steadfast in our absolute reliance on Jesus Christ, but to always show compassion to the afflicted and spiritually wounded, knowing that people may suffer for reasons beyond their personal sin. Job's suffering led to his deeper understanding of God's sovereignty and wisdom. The story demonstrates God's ultimate victory over Satan and how we can be part of that victory. Life is not meaningless. There is a point to every experience, good or bad, if only we could see, learn, and appreciate the limitedness of our knowledge of the divine mysteries of the universe. Thank you for watching. God bless you.